Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Cardboard. On this episode, we are reviewing the Stoneblade Entertainment flagship game, Solforge Fusion. Thank you for joining us. As always, if you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, leave us a comment. We are really excited about this game that is new from Stoneblade Entertainment called Solforge Fusion. As always, I'm your host, Jurch. To my right is John, and to my left is Corey. I'm going to be the one to explain this game a little bit because out of the three of us, I kind of dove in head first and have really enjoyed this game. Solforge Fusion is a lane-based combat game where you are given 4 half decks and you are to merge 2 of them to create your full playable deck. As you play a card, you upgrade it from your library to a higher level for a card that is usually stronger in its abilities or its stats. Cards come in 2 types. They are spells or creatures. Each player has 50 life points, and each creature has a sum of life points as well, and you play until one person's life points are reduced to 0, or through 4 deck cycles of this game. I first heard about this game about a year and a half ago from my brother-in-law, who was really into the digital version of Solforge. And it took Justin Gary and Richard Garfield and their team a few years to come up with the card version that could make the mechanics work, but make it as a hybrid version. Hence the fusion of either in real life and digital cards. I even love this game so much that Cody and I started a podcast that is part of the Talking Cardboard Entertainment Gaming Network called the Charge Plated Podcast, and you can find that anywhere podcasts are distributed. This game is set to release on September 22nd of 2022, and we are really excited that we were able to get some Kickstarter product and play through it. So John, what has been your first impressions of Solforge Fusion?
Through probably, a dozen games, I really like this. It doesn't dethrone Magic, that's its own thing, but overall I would say this is probably the most enjoyable card game I've played outside of Magic in a long time.
And that's saying a lot because at Talking Cardboard, we throw a bunch of kind of card games in there. Some are more collectible, some are more you get what you have and you're playing, like Ascension type. Or, Corey, what are some of the other card games that we've played at Talking Cardboard?
Yeah, like Dominion, Clank. What's that other big game that you guys love?
Keyforge, Dune Imperium.
Dune Imperium. I was trying to think of Dune Imperium. But, yeah, a lot of those are just pure deck building games, either with just cards or with a board itself, so it's a more board game style. This is more in the collectible card game or trading card game type format-ish, but also, it brings some unique things to the table. Also, what I really like about this game the most is that it does sound a little complicated with, you've got 5 lanes. You are merging 2 different half decks to create one full deck. You are upgrading a card every time you play it down. It just sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, but really what I enjoy most is the simplicity at heart. You've only got 2 cards you're playing down per, it's not called deck cycle, but per hand,
per turn.
Right? Or per turn. So per turn, you throw down 1 card, your opponent does the same, you throw down your second card, your turn is over. There's no mana management, there's no percentages to deal with the deck building on how much mana you need for what and this and that, and playing with all the calculations in that. You just throw 2 halves together and play a card down and you're good to go.
And like you were kind of alluding to, is there's no deck building. All of these half decks are algorithmically generated. Say that 5 times fast. And you aren't changing in or out cards. The only deck building is fusing your 2 half decks together. That's the only deciding you get to make is what 2 are going to be good dance partners.
And I really like that because while I like Magic and having the customization of the commander decks I play, that is enjoyable. I do, like Corey said, like the simplicity of this, but it's not like Keyforge where here's your deck, figure it out and see if it works. This is, okay, you have 4 half decks if you're playing like a sealed, or you have multiple half decks that you're looking at, and you're looking for, okay, what synergizes well together. So there is some thought, but it's not as deep as a customizable card game, which for people that maybe don't have time or the money to delve into a customizable card game, this is a good alternative, although you can easily spend a lot of money on tons of half decks to see if you can finally make some good matches. Right. But I'd argue, once you have, 2 starter kits, or 2 booster kits, you're probably going to be able to get at least 1 combo with the 8 half decks you have.
And that's a good thing to mention. In a starter kit, you get everything to have 2 players play against each other, because you get 4 half decks, 1 from each of the 4 factions. There are 4 colored factions, and you merge 2 different factions together. So a starter set gives you the playmats, it gives you the damage and the health counters and things like that, and it gives you enough decks where you and somebody else can, mix and match and play a game right out of the box.
Yeah, and the game isn't quite out yet, so this is the first set. It's almost like, it's not really quite alpha or beta, but just after that, to where the cards really work well together. I feel like you can come to the table with any 2 halves that you're bringing for the deck, and you feel like you are in control of it and have a chance at winning. Yeah, some people can pilot some decks better than others, but even when you're losing this game, I still feel like you're in it and you're having fun and you're learning new things with every game.
There is so much exploration and fun in this game, which is part of what prompted me to really want to start the podcast, is to share my exploration, the synergies that I'm learning, building a new community. Heck, we had, 8 people here the other night playing through and just mix and match, people playing together, mix and match half decks. Here, try this out. Here, try that out. It's great. And I went to GenCon this past August, and we played in a bunch of different tournaments. There were the sealed tournaments. There was the general release, your more conventional championship where you bring your heat. And then they had something called a storyline tournament, where you could either bring your own deck or you could buy a sealed deck there and use that. And the results of your matches influence the lore of this game. On the Solforge Fusion website, there is story of each of the factions. There is storyline based on what happened at Gen Con, and it changes some of the promotional cards. Interviews with creator Justin Gary have said that the lore is changing future sets of the cards, and cards that might get released, or some of the flavor text in the bottom of cards, or abilities that are going to be in the game are all changed based on these storyline tournaments. So it was really cool to be a part of that and have the developers there standing on top of chairs screaming how excited they are for what just happened in this match here, or somebody laid a thunder sword that ended up doing like 40 damage to somebody, and how that's going to be written into the lore. That's something I've never seen in another game before.
It's really cool. Yep. Another thing, too, that hasn't been done in many other card games are the lanes. It seems a little gimmicky at first, but once you get into some of the cards having the keyword of mobility on it, and really kind of taking those lanes to your advantage in different ways, it does really depend on where you're playing a card in which lane. Some cards are even effect or action specific on which lane you're putting the card in. It affects it, whether it's in the far left or far right or whatnot too, so that can affect some of the decisions you're making. And also with mobility too, you can accidentally box a card in to where you can't utilize the mobility on the card, so you really have to be careful where, not only where you're placing a card, but also where you're placing that next card out of your hand, so you're not accidentally blocking it in. So that's cool.
A lot more levels of complexity without the game being too difficult. It's very approachable. You guys all picked it up very quickly.
Yeah.
Right, and for me as a Magic player, you can tell that someone involved with creating Magic was involved with creating this game. And there's kind of two folds with this, is that one, the simplicity of the keywords is really nice. Like, there's maybe a dozen keywords. Some are very, very obvious how they work, like deploy when you play it, activate, you're activating like Magic, you tap it. And two, if you're a Magic player, basically these are keywords that exist in the Magic card game, but slightly renamed. So if you played Magic or something like it, picking this up is going to be a breeze.
Yes.
And even though it has the name Forge in it, a lot of people have been confusing it for Keyforge. Is this just like Keyforge? Is this going to be a competitor for Keyforge? No, this is a much different game than Keyforge. Like John, like you said, it's more along the lines of an offshoot of Magic. You can be playing both games and you'll get a different experience. But like you said, there's a lot of similarities where you could pick this up and learn it very quickly and enjoy it in a different way very quickly.
Yep.
John, is there anything else you like about this game we haven't hit on yet?
One other thing I do like is, as you mentioned earlier, there are 4 factions of this game. You have, I don't know the names, but we're not going to go into that here. You have red, green, purple, and blue. And like Magic, the factions all play, or the colors all play very differently, and they have their own strengths and weaknesses. I really like that. It's the same reason I like Magic. When I'm picking the colors I play, there's some I play way more. I can see that happening in this game as well. Although I feel like the play styles of the factions in this game are a little more balanced than, say, Magic. So I kind of like that, where, you're not going to play blue and all it is control and counter spells. Blue in this game actually has, cool creatures and combos, and maybe it is a little more like control-y, but it has its own benefits too.
Well, part of that too is you are merging two different colors together, where you can't just play mono blue like in Magic.
Right.
And, it's either a mill or it's heavy on control. No, you can't really do that in this game.
And I do really like that aspect too. I mean, it would be cool if you could take two of your Tempest decks and mix them together. Because when I look at Tempest decks, it's like, of course, they're going to have synergy because that's what Red Tempest does.
Yep.
But yeah, it's nice that you are forced to take the two factions, put them together, and see what happens.
Yep.
And if you're looking for more in-depth analysis on the strategy and things like that, I will once again plug the podcast, the Charge Plated podcast. We have spent an episode going over each of the factions, Tempest, Aloyan, Necrium, and Utera. So it goes into all that in so much more detail if that's the type of experience you're looking for with this.
Yeah, I believe you're calling that part of your Evergreen series, which if you're interested in this game in general, haven't played it yet or just picked it up, I think there's 5 Evergreen episodes at least?
So,
maybe more.
I think it was about 7 because we talk about the keywords, we talk about the modifier terms as well. And as new sets get released, then we'll be adding to that library. I've been told by some of the developers that they plan on releasing 3 sets every year. So then you can kind of ballpark that out to about every 4 months, depending on distribution and things like that. But they have so much artwork and mechanisms already in their library because they're taking things from the digital Solforge game and reusing or altering the artwork and the mechanisms and the cards and things like that, that this game has so much that it can build off of already. We've just seen a snippet of it.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting to hear. Definitely.
So let's change tones a little bit and talk about maybe some of the negative aspects of it. Corey, is there like any negative aspect you'd want to talk about in Solforge Fusion?
Yeah, there's a couple things with the game that I think would bother anybody really, is there's a little bit of clunkiness to it. Obviously, it takes a little bit of getting used to. When you're playing a card, you immediately have to upgrade it. Whether or not you say what the card does first before you upgrade or vice versa, it's up to you. I don't know what the correct way to do it is in tournament play or whatnot or what happens. Maybe people just memorize it. But the clunkiness with the upgrading the cards is definitely present. It also, the health and damage upgrades and taking damage stay on the creatures also. So you're kind of, it's a little fiddly with the dice and making them up, putting them back down. We didn't really talk about that as a pro, but that also is a pro too. It's different having health stay after it's hurt. It doesn't just regen at the end of the turn like in Magic, for example. But it is a little clunky with the card upgrading and with the dice. So I would say that would probably be one negative.
And that's been a universal complaint or comment on all that. That was the most difficult aspect they have had in terms of trying to get something that was fully automated and digital into a real-life version. And once you do get that muscle memory done, and that takes some time, and I know for me, when I've got so many moving parts, it's hard for me to remember all of it, that is present, but the more you get into it, the more it just becomes a little bit more natural.
Yeah.
But that is obviously something that we should mention is having the upgrade every time. Otherwise, you have to go back and fix it. And if you catch it too late, then, there's that whole dilemma of how do we untangle
That's what I was going to say. And I love the upgrade system. It's very fun and interesting because it really makes your decisions matter a little more, especially if you're trying to get to a level 3. But I am very curious on that aspect of, in competitive play, what happens if you forgot to level something up, you've gone into the next deck cycle and shuffled your deck. I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it because, one, my thought would be, well, just take that upgraded card, put it into your discard pile, and you missed out for the cycle. But on the other side, well, now your deck's lighter, so now your odds of drawing those other cards you upgraded are now higher. So what's the solution to that? But yeah, that'd probably be one of my cons. The only other thing I could think of is kind of the upkeep for this game, like how do you store stuff? How do you transport stuff? How do you document what you have or look at everything? Because I have 16 half decks already, and it's like, I don't know, they're sitting on a table right now. It's a lot. So, but that's collectible card games in general.
And part of what they have in the infrastructure for Solforge Fusion is their online database, where each deck has a QR code where you get to scan that, and then you can claim that deck. And then you've got your online library, and you can be fusing those online as well in order to be able to figure out what good combinations are working.
Yeah.
And that site is always going to be improving and trying to make this game, the Fusion style of being able to have an in-person or a digital, be equally supported.
I will say that is probably the best solution so far to the storage and upkeep, is that if you upload those decks onto your online profile, you no longer have to sit and look through the physical copy. You can just pop that page up, look through the deck. I know some people that are really smart have made spreadsheets you can put your decks into to track them, as well as like understand what's in your deck and what synergizes in your deck. So that's kind of cool, where you're not having to sit down and look through every single card every time and try to remember what's going on.
Or throwing them easily into TTS and playing online with people around the world.
Yes, on the Solforge Fusion website, they even explain how to upload your decks onto Tabletop Simulator and run that mod. And with the Tabletop Simulator, it does automatically upgrade your cards, so you don't have to click it from your library of each faction, put it in your discard. It does that part automatically.
I will say that's a huge benefit that Stoneblade Games took advantage of, is they've made a lot of these housekeeping and TTS play like front and center on their website, where most games it's like someone else has come in and done this and you just need to know how to find it. But I like how they've integrated this so much with the community that it's easy to get and play either in person or online.
Absolutely. And talking with the developers, and Justin Gary in particular, they all have this message of community, and they want to make this game approachable and fun and get people involved and invested, which is why they do the events while they're at all the major
tournaments.
And the storyline as well.
Huge.
Yeah, because it is about this community and the shared story that we're all going through. So having things like Tabletop Simulator to allow people who are far away to be able to have people to play with, or if you don't have a way to be storing your cards, and you can have it all digitally anyways, and then you just kind of pack your cards away, trying to make this game approachable for a lot of people.
Yeah, this is getting too positive again. I have to throw a couple more negatives in. We were kind of getting back to positives.
Yeah, that's right.
I have one gameplay negative to add in here and one emotional negative. So the gameplay negative that I can think of also is that what John alluded to a little bit ago is where drawing a hand of cards at the inopportune moment, at the wrong time. There's no like saving a card for the future. Like, hey, you can lock one card away, for example, like a gameplay mechanism that you can bring back into a future hand, for example.
Right, like in Magic, you're just storing your hand. It's always available to
There's
you.
no storing in this game. Like, even if they had one simple mechanism like that, like, this board wiper, this kill a card type thing could be used later, or this card needs something else on, like a mage on the board or something to synergize with, and you draw it in the wrong order. There's no way to really get around that. So you could draw on.
No way yet. That may be coming in future sets, because like I said, they release new sets every about 4 months.
And while I do feel that is a very feels bad moment, I also think with only 20 cards in your deck, if you could store a card, that might be really powerful.
Yeah, that's 5% of your deck that you get to just hold off for.
But if it's like maybe one card for a cycle, maybe I don't know. I'd be curious to see if that ever plays into the game at all. But I definitely understand. Like, there's a lot of feels bad moments, and it's just like that's the way the shuffle and the cut happened, and you're gonna have to do your best to mitigate that hand and see what you can play out.
Yeah, and I keep coming back to the horror stories that I hear about, like competitive Magic players going back to professional MTG.
Draw all mana.
How come, or that, but how come some of these top MTG professionals, how come they win every tournament or take top 2 in every tournament? They've caught a lot of people cheating with the shuffle. They've caught and with only 10 cards in this deck, you could really mentally go, okay, I need this card in the front for my first hand, I need this card in the back. Okay, perfect. Okay, now cut, or I know they're going to cut, whatever, maybe that'll help it, but if you can get the cards in the right spot, even with a cut, that might kind of help that. But anyway, that's kind of beside the point. The other emotional negative that I kind of feel with this game is, and it could just be because there's only one set out, but when you're opening a new pack of cards, I don't get that excitement that I did with booster packs for a collectible card game. There's no like holographic cards that you could get that are kind of like, oh, yet. But there's like, oh, hey, I got the holo of this. Oh, this is so cool. I'm going to add it to my deck because it looks, but you can't really add it to your deck, I guess, because it's got a unique name on it. Or pulling rares, or I know there's rares, but you know what I mean. There's not really that whole like, oh my gosh, look what I just got.
Treasure hunting.
I will say there is somewhat of a flip side to that, because every card in the game comes with a print number on it, and if it's like the first printed version of that card. I'm sure it's never going to be a collector's market for stuff like that, but maybe in the back of your mind, like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Because you have a deck that you pulled that was a first print of a Betrayer Undeady.
Two of those, and that one I just cracked a week ago. And it's like, oh man, this Betrayer's never existed. I mean, maybe someone else has opened other prints of it, but I have the first Betrayer print.
It's kind of neat, yeah. I mean, we're talking about things that, I mean, the game hasn't even released yet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, but in all fairness, give us some hollows or something to get excited over, to make our decks look a little bit different than the other. Because when I throw down a green-blue and I'm playing another green-blue, it looks the same. I mean,
not to spoil anything I'm not allowed to spoil yet, but there have been discussions about holographic cards or holographic like Forge cards or Forge-born cards and things like that. So that has not been ignored by the team.
Or confirmed.
Correct. It's neither been confirmed nor denied. But it has.
That would help that though. Just something that's splashy. Something to get excited about. So.
Well, then next time I'm playing you and I've got like a Scorchmane Dragon I put out, I will make it splashy and I'll jump up on the table, say boom.
Thin layer of water before we play.
Yes.
Splash it down.
But those concerns are valid, as well as one of the major concerns we've heard from other groups is like the artwork of the cards. I personally, that's not really a big thing for me.
Same,
I'm more concerned about the gameplay. Everything is outlined very streamlined, so you can read it. Your eyes go to the important pieces.
Yeah.
And then you're able to immerse yourself in the game. As far as comparing it to other card games, I don't have a mental library enough to say, oh, it's better than this, it's worse than this. It may be a detractor for some. For me, I don't see it as a problem at all. It's helping me immerse myself in the game that I want to be playing.
Would you guys like it if there was full art cards or alternate art? I know we talk about how it would get a little bit muddy with that. How it's nice having the same artwork on first, second, and third level of card. But once you learn the game and know what a card kind of does anyway, would it be kind of cool if they started introducing that, in your opinion, or just keep it the way it is?
I don't think you could do full art on these ones unless you memorize the keywords and creatures, because full art wouldn't include the abilities, so that'd be kind of tough. Whereas Magic, a card does what a card always does, so I see they are limited in that aspect, but they could do like alt art and stuff like that, but...
Or full art with the text on top of the art or something. I'm just saying just something different.
That would definitely be possible in future sets. I like that you're still able to read everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And nothing in this game is too complex where you need a full paragraph like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something like that.
Yes.
So I like
10,000 life points or whatever.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's really straightforward and simple and easy to read, but they could probably, maybe gussy it up a little bit in future sets or limited edition cards or things like that. That's, that would be nice, but that wouldn't improve my gameplay experience at all.
Yeah. It's just something to add a little bit to the uniqueness of my deck is different than yours, even though it's dumb. It's dumb different. Saying that, because it's algorithmically generated
in every deck.
Deck anyway. Yeah. But it just feels the same when you're playing another green blue or a purple red or whatever against another purple red. So
my last comment on this, even though I've never used these things, but maybe the design team's already figured this out, but for future starter kits, it may cost more to the consumer, but dice should be the default item included with the starter set that helps you track the health and attack of your minions. The Kickstarter version came with little cards that you can put behind or on top of. I don't even know how it works. Like I said, I haven't used them because I just immediately either had dice with the Kickstarter
to modify the stats,
or I went and grabbed some D20s from Magic and brought those over. But the dice work, in my opinion, so much better.
That's a really good point. That could detract a lot of people from not even trying the game after trying it once because of the clunkiness of that cards would bring.
Sure, and that makes sense. In the Kickstarter, if you are a Kickstarter backer at a certain level, you got the D8s or D10s, and you can just kind of scroll them up and down for each of those. In the starter sets, like you said, they do have cards. But if you're going to a game store, maybe picking up a set of red and green D10s would really help kind of eliminate
100%.
that.
Yep,
definitely.
That's a really good point to add.
I know a lot of games, generally, people upgrade something on the side, like components, but for this, I really feel like that should just be the standard, and at the very least, go out and buy some dice if you get into this game.
Excellent. Well, John, we always start with you, so let's start with you again. Your final rating using the BGG 0 to 10 scale for your ratings on Solforge Fusion.
Yeah, thinking into the pros of this game and the cons, like I said, the ease of play, really great. I really like the nature of combining the half decks. The gameplay seems pretty solid to me, and all the unique kind of mechanics this game has. I'm gonna bump this right up to a 9.5 to start. Like, this is a lot of fun. Like,
wow.
For card games, this is right behind Magic, and Magic's a 10 in my book. So I could see myself actually enjoying playing this more competitively than Magic, just because Magic's so established, and I don't know if
expensive to get a good deck.
Expensive.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's a little more sweaty, I guess. Like, people are much more invested into Magic, I feel, and so far the community for Solforge is new and more welcoming. So, yeah, 9.5.
And I am right there with you at a 9.5.
Well,
the only thing keeping this from a 10 is I don't think it's for everybody. A lot of people might get turned off of a card game because, oh, well, it's just like Magic, or it's just like this or that. And a lot of people have had either negative experiences or they already have their game that they're into. So that's what keeps it from a 10 rating. But everybody that I've suggested this to has enjoyed it. We have our gaming group now is up to about 8 people that show up to be playing, where I thought it might just be us 3 and then Cody, my brother-in-law. I've gotten so invested in this game, I've got a podcast out now too, and I've been doing competitive tournaments at GenCon, going to be doing it at PAX Unplugged. I just really feel invested in this game personally, and I love it, and I love sharing it with people. All the pros that we have, I echo them completely. All the cons are perfectly valid, but I don't think it takes away from my experience. It's just that I don't know if this game would be for everybody because card games aren't for everybody.
Yeah.
But I love everything about this game. I love the community, the storyline, the interesting things they're doing beyond what comes in this box. Corey, take us home.
Yeah, for me, the whole card game, like George just said, the whole card game genre of games isn't really for me anymore. It kind of died with, it started with Magic, and then it kind of evolved into other games, and then it kind of died again with Magic because it just is more of a lifestyle game. Time sink, a money sink. This one doesn't have a lot of that, but it does have some of the other nuances that you do have to kind of study what you're doing. Or I feel like one of the other turnoffs for the game is too, when you're coming down to the table with your deck, the player you're playing against might know your cards better than you, or know how to play your cards better than you, because it is just the first set. So everybody, if you've studied all the cards and know the cards, you're going to know the cards. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there is a little bit of that, but even that being said, it is a 9 for me. It's fantastic. I would say it's probably my favorite card game on the market right now, just because obviously Magic was way up there too. I just don't play Magic anymore.
Mm-hmm. And once you're off that bandwagon, it's hard to get back on. It
is tough. I mean, I still like doing, and I think I would like doing sealed tournaments, sealed drafts, and stuff like that. Magic, same deal. I like doing the sealed. It's just I'm just not as heavily invested in trying to learn and just get fire hosed with information on how to best play a game anymore in that more lifestyle sense. I think if I were, this would be a lot higher for me. In years past, I would have brought this game and tried my luck in tournaments and that sort of thing. But because I'm not in that anymore, it's still a 9, but that's the reason why it's at where it's at. So,
and parenthetically, I am tickled pink that you guys have really taken to this game. This is something that Cody and I were really doing, and I was hoping you guys would enjoy it, and understandably you'd be a little apprehensive. But just the fact that you guys have enjoyed it as much as you have, that really makes me feel good about how much I bring this game to the table and the potential for this game to grow.
Yeah.
So for all of us here at Talking Cardboard, if you like Solforge Fusion, check out the Charge Plated podcast on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you can find a podcast. For all of us here, get out there and play some games.